It's the humility group.
That's right. Okay. So we're being live streamed, it says.
So it shows on your screen. There you go. All right.
Yeah, there we go.
Welcome, everyone. This is episode number 14, season 2 of the Bayshore Christian Alumni Podcast. And what a very special evening we have tonight. Each week we think we can't top ourselves, and then we end up with the educational dream team of Bayshore Christian legends. With me tonight, first, my guest host, best known as Missy Cabot. I remember her as Mr. Cabot's daughter, Melissa Charlene. Thank you for joining us tonight. We also have the legends themselves, starting with Val Stevens, now Valentina Stevens Sutton, Miss Gigi ERICKSON, and my geometry teacher, Miss Patty Fuller. Ladies, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Our pleasure.
We're going to go right around the room. We'll start with Miss ERICKSON. What we'd like to do is get from you your basically the whole biographical story. Originally where you're from, college, how did you end up at Bayshore and your time at Bayshore? And if you can tell us that, that'd be great.
So now I have an hour and a half to do this?
With the condensed version, hopefully the condensed.
Okay.
Continued.
No, I was born in Virginia, Minnesota. Well, whoopee. Anyway, let's see. How much biographical? I went to college at University of Minnesota, Duluth. Before that I was back in Virginia, and I was at a junior college there, the same one that my mom and dad both went to. And I met my husband there in September. So we went together the 4 years of college, and then we got married in 1965, and we're in Minnesota for a while, then moved to Florida. And I taught in public school for a couple of years, and then our church started a school. So I was the first grade teacher of Northgate Baptist School. Was there for 6 years. And then I was hanging around the wrong people, obviously. we loved the Lord so much. We had a Bible study in our home, and the Baptists got wind of that and didn't like it too much. And we received the baptism of the Holy Spirit and were given the left foot of fellowship at that church. And then that summer was the first vacation Bible school that Bayshore Church had. And
what summer is this? What summer is this?
That was the summer of 77.
Okay.
And I was asked to come and be the Bible storyteller for that vacation Bible school. So I did, and it was so exciting. And then I heard that there was an opening for a first grade position because Bayshore had started in middle school, gone up to high school, and now they were adding elementary. So I put in an application, and Idris Carr had been the principal. She had had the heart attack, and she was not actively being a principal at that time. Kirby Rich was the principal. And I interviewed, and the Lord gave me the position, called me there to Bayshore. So I was there, first grade teacher, for years, and then sort of oozed into administration during Herman's years. Well, before Herman, we had Mr. Rich for a couple of years, and then we had
Ron Yonker.
Yeah, you started with Ron, yeah, way back, earlier than me. And then, we had Mr. Gids, Dr. Gids, and then Herman came. And then at that time, I became the elementary coordinator as well as the first grade teacher, and worked both jobs all the time. And then after Herman left and Donna Brooks came, she said, no, we'll have a high school principal and we'll have an elementary principal. And so then I became that and didn't need to teach anymore. So just was the full-time lower school principal at that time. So I served the Lord there from 1977 till 2012 when I retired.
What a history. I mean, you basically did everything at Bayshore. I'm going to come back to you in a little bit and ask about your relationship with Coach Valdez, because obviously us players basically lived in fear of him and this caricature of him. So I'm really curious of the dynamic between the staff. I'm going to introduce now Valentina Stevens Sutton. Miss Stevens, Val, you were either assistant principal, your administrative staff when I was in school there, and I was an office assistant. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you remember. I mean,
Assistant principal.
There you go. I apologize for my time as office assistant now. Sorry, I didn't apologize then. But tell us a little bit about your teaching history and how you ended up at Bayshore and your time at Bayshore.
All right, I'd love to. I was born in Tampa, Florida, and lived there for 54 years, then moved here to Georgia almost 20 years ago. But my first 2 years of teaching were at my home church at the time, which was New Orleans Baptist School. And I was in church one night, and at the end of the service, the pastor said, we have need for one teacher. And I already had a contract in North Carolina, but the Lord knocked me over the head, and I walked up there and I said, what do you need? He said, I need social study. I said, I'll be right there. Never asked how much I made. It didn't matter. And so
much.
that, pardon me?
How much did you make?
Oh gosh, are you ready? $90 a week before taxes.
Woo!
With a degree from the University of South Florida, my first degree. So then I worked there for 2 years and then went to Alaska. And I had met Maisie at New Orleans. She had actually worked there. And we drove from Tampa to Fairbanks, Alaska, just the two of us in a Volkswagen van. That is a story for another hour or two. But anyway, came back because we had to decide to stay through winter or come back before winter. And so we came back in November. Well, our school's already started. Everybody's good. And so I just kept reading ads and stuff like that. And there was this place called Bayshore Christian School. So I made an interview appointment. I had been to the dentist, had my wisdom teeth pulled. My mouth was packed, swollen. And I went in, Dave Talack was the head of the chairman of the school board then. And we talked for a little while. And when I walked out, they said, we'll call you. Well, they did. And I had, that's where it began in, I guess, 1974, at the very same time that Kathy Jordan came back from the mission field and came to Bayshore to teach Bible. And we still are very, very good friends. She probably would kill me, but she just celebrated her 80th birthday. And so we became very good friends, as did Gigi and I over the years.
Right.
So I was supposed to help a teacher with math. Oh my goodness. What a joke. No, I did for a little while. And then all of a sudden, Miss Carr came in and she said, no, we're going to change this. You're going to have to be the teacher. She's going to have to help you. And so that's what happened. And that lasted for that year. And then I got to teach social studies and Bible. Bob Jones, Life of Christ, Heroes and Villains, to kids that now I still hear from as sixth graders who meet me on Facebook and ask me, Miss Stevens, always Miss Stevens, will you answer this question for me and tell me what the Bible says? Now you're talking about the blessing. Yeah. You don't get that.
That is so awesome.
You don't get that in your paycheck. So from there, I stayed at Bayshore for 18 years. I did a whole bunch of different kinds of things. It was in the classroom about 8 or 9 years. The first graduating class was in 1977. We had 6 seniors. And Miss Jordan and I chaperoned the senior trip to St. Augustine. still keep in touch. We have lost some seniors, but still keep in touch. And tremendous blessing. So then moved up for some other things, I think it was curriculum one time, and then it was dean of students one time, and then it was assistant principal. And so that's where I stayed until my husband and I got married. It'll be 30 years ago this coming March. You got to believe in miracles, because he's my first, last, and only. So, but anyway, then I moved from there to Seminole Presbyterian. Same kind of story. I called them up. Y'all got any positions that are going to be open for next year? I want to have time for my family, because I also inherited at the time a 12-year-old daughter. That's how old Tracy was then. She's 42 now. And I wanted to just be a family. So they hired me, and I got to teach for a semester. And then they said, no, we want you to be the guidance counselor.
Well, there's
I said,
so
I
many,
can only spell guidance.
Ms. Stevens, there's
Excuse
so many Bayshore stories that end up at Seminole Presbyterian. Us athletes sort of look at them as a rival, but we'll let it slide because you're such a sweet, lovely lady that we love so much. So, but
Well, I will let it slide too. I had 10 good years, but nothing can compare to the 18 at Bayshore. Nothing. So anyway, it just kept going. And then they asked me to be principal. And so I was principal there. And then after 10 years, we moved up here, and I taught for 3 years. And then they made me principal at the middle school. So I say all that to say, Bayshore was a part of Jeremiah 29:11 for me. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. And can't deny it.
On my end, I got a little bit of a bad connection, so I'm going to jump in and interrupt there. But what you mentioned so many great names. You mentioned Miss Maisie. I'll never forget, that was the first person I met when I walked in the door to enroll at Bayshore, and she was the sweetest, nicest woman I had ever met, other than my mother. I mean, showed me around to the classroom. She was just wonderful. You mentioned Kathy Jordan, who was my Bible teacher as well. I'm going to turn now and introduce Patty Fuller. Miss Fuller, I apologize to Miss Stevens for being office assistant and all of my behavior. I apologize for my behavior and poor performing as a student in geometry class. You are well loved. And before we allow you to introduce yourself, John Arville wanted to make sure that I read like 5,000 notes he gave me. You were like the senior class advisor, I guess, for class of 85. Took the class on trips. He says that you'll never know how big you were to him and to the students in that class, how important you were to them. What a mentor and someone to look up to, that you were an inspiration to them. Wanted to make sure I said all of those things and make sure that you knew that he really appreciated all that you did for them. He was your teacher assistant. He tells a funny story in one of the other podcasts of you sent him to do some photocopies on that purple Rizzo machine, and instead he ended up eating Coach Dibble's lunch that was left in the teacher's
surprised
lounge.
me a bit.
But Ms. Fuller, please, if you could tell us about your history, your time at Bayshore, and thank you again for joining us, please.
Okay, I was born in Tampa as well, and was saved at Bayshore in middle school, and went to USF, and moved into the dorms at USF like my junior year. Just got tired of circling the parking lot looking for a parking space. So from the dorms, I met a group of Christians, and they all had a carpool to Bayshore Methodist.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I went to Bayshore Methodist. Can I come on your carpool? And they're like, of course. We got a guy, he's got a big old car, and you can certainly come. So the driver of the big old car was Kevin Fuller. And so so essentially I met him at Bayshore too, because we walked into church as a group of us, and I didn't know this guy. I happened to sit next to him, and Pastor Bob Shelley had the whole group, we stood up, we sang and all the things, and he had everybody hold hands. And after we finished singing and sat down, he never let go of my hand. And so it was like, what's going on here? And that was 42 years ago. That was actually almost 44 years ago. when we met. So kind of I have a huge history with Bayshore. Went to USF, graduated, worked a year at Buchanan Middle School, or junior high back then. And then I was a temporary position. And at the end of that year, I didn't have a job. So I was a lifeguard for that summer. And somebody called me, I don't know who, and said, hey, you want to come to Bayshore and teach? And I'm like, no, not really, no. But I didn't really have a job lined up. So I went down and talked to John Gads. And by the time I left, I had a job. And so Joan Shook had left. She had been the math teacher, singular, and she had gone on. And I never met her at the time. And so I took over the math department. And but I had taught 1 year of junior high. And before that, I got a degree, but you don't learn anything when you get a degree. It's just sort of, you go to school a bunch. And so now all of a sudden I'm going to teach Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, senior math, 7th grade. It was like, so I was a lifeguard at Simmons Park down in Ruskin, which is a really slow beach. So I spent every morning, because nobody really came till 1, learning senior math up there on the lifeguard stand. Wow. So I had notebooks and notebooks full of all the material from senior math so that I could walk in there and have a clue, right? Because they were like real students, right? They really wanted to learn. And that whole first year I heard, well, Mrs. Shook did it this way and Mrs. Shook did it that way. Yeah. So then when Joan came back to Bayshore, she just constantly tells me the story of how I told her that, I'm hoping I didn't do this right at the very beginning of meeting her, like it sounds like she says, but that I told her I hate Mrs. Shook because I had this whole feeling of, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't as good as Mrs. Shook. And she and I became bestest of friends. And we carpooled together from out here in Riverview down to Bayshore every day for years and years and years, solved all the problems of the world and, figured it all out. So then I was at Bayshore from 1980 until 1989 when I left to have children. And so Brittany is 32 now.
That's
and,
a story in itself.
Well, her being born right in time for the bell. She came at 8:29 in the morning, just in time for school. And then after that, I started at HCC and was at HCC and USF for 20 years or so. And then that got to be I was teaching at USF with little kids, and you have to drive out there and find a parking space and hike in from the Sundome to your classroom, circle the parking lot for hours. And, it's an entire day to teach an hour-long class. So somebody offered me a job at Strayer University. So then I went there where you park outside the door of your classroom, which is nice. So then I've been doing that since 2008. So that's 13 years that I've been there. And that brings us to now.
That is really awesome. What a great
That's what I've been doing for all the years.
Well, and another great name to connect with, Mrs. Shook from way back when, and that's really awesome. Before we turn to Miss Erickson, we have two things. One, we want to let Missy jump in and see if she has a quick comment or question for the ladies. We've already got our first comment or question online, so we'll say that in a second, and then we'll circle Miss Erickson, Miss Stevens, and back to Miss Fuller. Missy, do you have anything for these ladies to get started?
Well, so should I save my Miss Erickson show and tell for later? I try to always bring visual aids. So I have from first grade teacher, Miss Erickson, a couple of yearbook notes and my show and tell here.
Excellent. That is great.
And I have, now Miss Stevens was certainly there. I was born in 79. I remember you as the assistant principal in the office when it was across from, inside that where the basketball gym is on the left. That was the front office, like the main office, before the new office, which was affordable out there.
It's 30 years old now.
Yeah.
And then
And there was another office before that office came about. We moved all over the place.
I think that one was before my time, but the rest were there. But you, I think I was really, really young when you were the assistant.
Sure. So was I. But anyway.
And then, but I remember you. I mean, I feel like, did you used to have really short hair? Short hair, right? It was dark.
I don't know. Yeah, it was kind of bouffant kind of thing, kind of you know,
Classic 1980s.
I remember that.
that's,
And then Miss Fuller, I was talking about before, that I didn't get to have in high school. I hope I didn't, because if I did, I forgot. But no, but I was like really, I struggled with math for my entire life, pretty much, I think. From like 3rd grade on, I remember that. But Miss Fuller tutored me through college algebra because I was not going to pass. And I remember driving, Dad set it up, my dad, because they were longtime friends from Bayshore. So I could drive out there to Riverview, and she would tutor me. I'm sure if we paid her anything, it was nominal. So after she helped me pass the college course, I was gonna just help her out one night, and I wanted to just do something to like let her and her husband go out to dinner. And so I was gonna babysit, just come over and just hang out with the kids for a couple hours and something like that. And I don't even know if you remember. Do you remember this, Miss Fuller? Remember what happened?
I don't. This is
Yeah.
great.
I finally had the opportunity. We coordinated, and I was able to go there. And I guess it would have been with Brittany, right?
Yeah,
You had 2 girls? Did you have 2 kids?
I have 3 altogether.
Okay, I remember 2 there this night that were chasing each other around. I don't even
Yeah,
know their destination. But yeah, I was so mortified. I had to call you guys. Like, I think she broke her toe, or if she didn't break it, I think you had to take her to get it looked at in the ER because it was like blood everywhere. Her toenail was hanging off. And she's
oh, I remember that part. Maybe that's why I forget the whole rest. It was the whole ER visit.
so yeah, I definitely remember that story. But
Was that the end of your babysitting career?
what's that?
Was that the end of your babysitting career?
At the Fuller household, it was. That was a one-time wham bam, thank you, ma'am. I guess I don't know, but yeah, that I felt sick about that. And so many times over the years, I'm like, and she was so gracious. It could have happened to anybody. It was an accident. They shouldn't have been running. We've been talking to them about that.
Well, I mean, reality is they chased each other and beat each other up their whole childhood. They were awful, okay? When they were real little, they were the best little kids. Oh, my children don't have sibling rivalry. They're so wonderful. Well, until they got to be like 6, and then they were just terrible. Well, now they're 28, 30, and 32, and they're becoming friends. I love this. But it took a really long time. So thank you for the help that you gave them to become what they are now.
That is really great. We're going to turn to Miss Erickson now, and we've got a couple of comments already online, and it's from another Cabot. This is John Michael. And ladies, I have these very deep philosophical questions I wanted to ask about Christian education, but we got a ways to go, so hopefully you've got some time. John Michael Cabot says, Miss Erickson, you are the GOAT storyteller, as in greatest of all time. Give that woman a picture board and a bullwhip, and she'll captivate the masses in any chapter.
That's right.
And Mrs. Fuller, well, I'm not sure which one this is. Greatest tutor ever, as the entire Cabot household marvels to this day that Missy wound up a math teacher. So, Mrs. Fuller, thank you very much for helping out with Missy's tutoring. And Miss Erickson, I want to turn to you now and ask this question. I'm going to ask each of the ladies. What is your most memorable moment at Bayshore Christian? Accreditation, getting through to a singular student, a chapel. What is the thing, or it could be several, but what sticks out the most from your time at Bayshore Christian? We'll start with Miss Erickson.
Well, there were astounding things that happened every single year, and it's hard to put a finger on the most. I love teaching chapel. I just absolutely loved it. And there was one particular chapel, and I can't recall the year, but Jeannie Barnes was the K4 teacher, and it was Palm Sunday, coming up to Palm Sunday. So we called it Palm Friday. And I had one of the guys go out and cut a bunch of palm fronds so that every little kid had a palm frond. And so they were going to raise their palm fronds and say the Bible verse, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." So anyway, I was teaching, and the 4-year-olds started, we sort of did a call back and forth. I would raise my palm frond and say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," and then talked about how Jesus said that if we don't praise him, the rocks will cry out. And anyway, and then there was a psalm that said the little children would cry out. So I was telling them, it's been a long time, so I don't recall it exactly, but
Yeah.
so those 4-year-olds started raising their palm fronds and saying over and over and over again, louder and louder and louder, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And then they got out of their seats and they started walking around the sanctuary. And it was it wasn't out of control, but it was out of my control. It was in the Holy Spirit's control. And these little children were not going to let the rocks cry out for them. They were going to bless the Lord. And they went on and on and on, maybe 5 minutes or so, walking around. And whew, it was just out of this world. It was really wonderful. One of the most significant chapels spiritually, I think, that I was involved in. I don't know, there was a lot of them. Okay, so next came the elementary kids, and I told the same story, and it was so it wasn't me, it was the Lord moving these little tiny 4-year-olds who understood. And so again, that was something the whole time that I taught chapel, through to the little ones as well as to the elementary kids, those little children could understand. If you got the vocabulary down to their level, they would understand the spiritual principles. And I was teaching one time, right this moment, I can't think, the thought is gone. But anyway, a little 3-year-old was raising his hand. He had the answer, and it was right. I know, whatever it was, this 3-year-old kid had some spiritual principle that the other kids didn't get. He did. So that's significant to me, that that children, they received the word of the Lord, and they hid it in their hearts. And to this day, I have children who are in their 30s and 40s who write back and say, "Oh, I remember whosoever's heart house," or "I remember he took my whippings from me when I did have that bull whip and cracked it," and stuff like that. It was life-changing to them, as well as to the teller of the story. To me, it was life-changing. So
That's really awesome to hear.
it is.
You touch on something that's really noticeable when you communicate with Bayshore graduates or just people who went to the church ministry, that
Mhm.
that the Holy Spirit moved through that ministry. There's a lot of ministries that are no longer around. There's many that are dead in the word. We don't wish that. I mean, obviously, but you can tell the impact that is hit all of the kids, adults, and the people that have come through Bayshore Christian. And it's really neat to hear you share that story.
From the tiniest child all the way through the most mature high school student, the Lord was real to them. And it was real because we allowed the moving of his wonderful Holy Spirit in our lives as teachers, and children then were open to his teaching, the real teacher who lives inside, to his teaching in middle school and high school, and and throughout our lives, even after graduation, or after us having graduated and retired and gone on. It's great. It's wonderful to see this.
I'm gonna have to jump in after each of you talk, because I of course have so many vivid memories, but I'll try to get back. I was just gonna say, countless flannel graph stories and visual things that I remember from those chapel services when I was there.
Did you just say flannel graph?
Oh yeah.
Do they still use flannel graphs?
I
Well,
was actually thinking, I was just thinking recently when I was, mentally preparing for this, why don't we use that? Because we're always making stuff with Velcro. I'm creating them, and I was thinking of your flannel graph, like how easy it would be if I had that now. But anyway,
no. I just sent all of mine to Larry Brooks.
still had that
I had them all.
way. Oh my God.
And so, but Larry teaches at his grandchild's chapels and so I just sent him all my flannel graph stories. So,
That's so awesome.
And how many more of us there are that remember these stories. But one I'll share was just an analogy of the salvation story was a brother or something, or no, a boy that was having to train for something, and he had to wear a backpack full of rocks every single day, or he had roller skates, and he was at some point he was like just dying or going up a hill or something, and so his brother took the backpack or something and carried it the rest of the way for him, or I don't know, but it was an image of Jesus taking our sin and paying the price. And anyway, I was just thinking, like, that's just one of how many that I heard from you, and I'm just one of how many, and so yeah, there would be no limit to the number of seeds that were planted, first of all, much less no way to measure how big the garden bloomed and how the seeds carried by the wind and the birds, and just.
that's right. If you look at all of us here, you guys as students years ago and us as teachers years ago, we were all farmers. We planted seeds, spiritual seeds, probably the most important, but then also seeds of learning and all sorts. But that's what we were, was you dig the ground and you fertilize it and plant those seeds in there, and you see the growth. And the Lord promised that we would have a bountiful harvest. And I look at the alumni of Bayshore Christian School, and they are a harvest. It's just wonderful.
That's exactly right. And y'all are all using the same words that we've heard in previous podcasts, that the seeds that were planted, the mission field that was sown. So that's really neat how the same language is interconnecting through these podcasts. I'm going to turn now to Ms. Stevens, but Ms. Stevens, before we ask you this question, I want to make sure one more. Kyle Frisco says online that he'll always remember Miss Erickson's famous whistle. So that's really cool. Thank you, Kyle. So, Ms. Stevens, I think of accreditation because I remember being a junior and Coach Dibble having a T-shirt, "I survived accreditation."
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's what sticks out in my mind. What is your most famous, or what are some of your memorable moments from your time at Bayshore Christian that you could share with us here tonight?
Accreditation would definitely be one of them. There were just page after page after page of documentation that had to be submitted. And I spent many days at home at the kitchen table with a manual typewriter, typing the entire document. The first time we fell a little bit short, but we went back and remediated what they needed. And the second time we did become accredited by Florida Council of Independent Schools. I still see those pages. No, it was a really, it was such a fulfilling experience, because accreditations, no matter whether you are private, public, parochial, whatever schools, they're so important. And so that was definitely, it was a work, and it took everyone in the entire system to put it all together. There are two things that really stand out to me, and they were first, I guess, at Bayshore. Well, I'm sure they were. And I don't remember the year, and I feel so bad about that. But anyway, the yearbook was dedicated to me, and I had no clue until they called my name, and I looked up, and there was my family sitting in the balcony area. What an honor. First female, I just don't know. And then I was asked to give the commencement address, shortest in the history of all time. But I do remember, don't be thinking that something is going to be a giant, because it can really be a grasshopper. I remember that, and that, I couldn't tell you what year it was. It's been so many years ago, I don't remember. But those two things just were so important to me. That was such a validation to me, which I felt like the Lord was saying, you're on the right track. You're doing what you need to be doing.
That is so awesome. Do you remember?
So
I'm sorry, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that those are two, very important things. And as I said, with the accreditation, that was an accomplishment. Now, all these many years later, of course, the school has other accreditations, but that was the only one. We didn't have any at that point.
Right.
So it was quite an accomplishment for everyone.
Absolutely. Do you remember when I was office assistant, we were supposed to come up with the Bible verse, and you and Miss Maisie were trying to guide me into better behavior, and you wanted and you wanted me to pick the Bible verse, and I picked John 11:35, which is Jesus wept. It was like real short. And
I think I do.
And both of you were like this as I'm reading the announcements over the intercom. I'm very sorry. But hopefully I've gotten better. But because you mentioned that you gave the shortest commencement address, that's what I remember was the shortest Bible verse.
They were out of there.
Yes, I was.
I'm telling you.
Coach Valdez was not happy because I let you and Miss Maisie down. But Miss
Well.
Fuller, that was really good stuff. Miss Fuller, we want to turn to you as well. Your fondest memory, it can be classroom, kids.
I have two.
Okay.
I have two. I mean, of course, 10 years of it, there's a lot of really important things that happen. One was my mentor, who was Miss Gigi ERICKSON, who, when I was a young teacher, it was my second job. I was 21, I think, when I started at Bayshore. And I picked Gigi's daughter up. I drove the school bus that first year, and and did I pick her up? No, she would have come with you. Why would I think I picked Denise up.
Oh, yeah.
So anyways, she was in that group of kids that I was driving the school bus and everything. And so I got to be friends with Gigi. And she would go, "Now, how are you?" I'm going, "I'm fine." She goes, "No, how are you really?" And she really made me address some things in my life that were, stumbling blocks or just barriers to things, and really made me grow up spiritually and emotionally and such. And so I don't know if you know how much of an impact you had on me, Miss Gigi, but you did. You had as much impact on me as you did on all those little children. And
Well, we had impacts on each other.
we did over the years. And which brings me to my funny story, which is Gigi and I, for the walkathon, Gigi and I did the announcements every afternoon for 1 or 2 or 3 years, several years. We did the hype for the walkathon. And for a couple of years, we did a Star Trek theme. Do you remember that? We dubbed the music. We got a cassette of the theme song for the Star Trek, and we pull on the music and talk like we were in Star Trek, and we would pump these kids up to go out and raise the money for the walkathon and everything. And that was like one of my favorite things we did. Every afternoon, I got to escape from my classroom for 10 minutes and come down and do those announcements. And that was just, the sort of things that you do when you're a small school and a small faculty and everybody does all the things. Like I was the cheerleader sponsor, the photography club sponsor, the senior class sponsor, you do all the things. And so it was a really good time.
Are there any memories you have from that 85
Come on.
85 senior trip?
Come
Because
on, Patty, tell the story.
Miss Erickson sent me your slide.
You got to tell the North
It's the
Carolina.
whole story. Okay,
Well.
so we went to North Carolina to go whitewater rafting. We stayed at the Nantahala Outdoor Center, which is a backpackers wave station, a place on the Appalachian Trail. And we rented these little hostels where the kids, could sleep extremely cold. But going up, I was driving the school bus, and John Dowdy what I had thought for these kids, I'm going to do all these nice things. I had a whole cooler full of sodas and sandwiches and stuff for them so that they could nourish themselves and we could just keep on driving. But John Daddy kept drinking Sprite all the way up and had to stop for the bathroom like 18 times. And so it was dark when we get there. So I'm in a 66 passenger school bus and we get to this in the mountains. This is up in Bryson City, is that right?
Yeah, it's
North Carolina. And so it says base camp this way. So I dutifully drive my school bus this way. And the hairpin turns in the dark. And we finally made it to the top. And I was like terrified. It was, and there were 24 kids. And John Dowdy's parents, John and Carol.
No, Edwards.
The Edwards, yeah. They were my chaperones, and we get to the top of the
They were
mountain.
the kids' chaperones.
Yeah. We get to the top of the mountain, and there's no place to turn around. It's a dead end switchback to the top of this thing. And so I get out, we get the kids out, and they get all bundled off to where they're going to sleep. And it's late at night. So they go to sleep. In the morning, they come out all wrapped in their blankets because they're Florida kids and they have not brought the proper clothing because it went down to 22 degrees at night. And we didn't have it on our cell phones yet to know what the temperature was going to be all the time. So they weren't very happy. But I come out, I'm looking at my school bus. I'm like, it's not my school bus. It's Joe Plant's school bus, right? And he was our school bus manager at the time. And so I'm going, Lord, what am I going to do? And so these two backpackers come out of the, on the Appalachian Trail, they come out of the woods. And one guy looks at it and he goes, I'm a professional truck driver. You want me to back it down for you? Yes, I want you to back it down for me. And zip, 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 he had it down where it belonged. And we went on. So that's like one of my favorite story of the school bus was my angel that walked out of the mountains that day.
Right.
And saved me from, dying on a mountain.
God sent somebody to save you right there because y'all were in trouble.
That was my angel. And I mean, I didn't get a name. I didn't get anything about him. It just, we want me to back it down. I'm like, I don't even care if you're really a truck driver. If you're willing to do this, you're on.
That is classic. That is classic.
So.
Those are such great stories, ladies. We've heard so many great names, and we just heard Joe Plant, and we had several others from Bayshore history. Thank you for sharing all those. We're going to go around the room again with more questions. Before I do, I want to turn to Missy. Missy, do you have questions or comments for these ladies, having heard these stories? Famous moments in Bayshore history, there's so many. What do you have next for the ladies?
Well, I have a little bit of a focus problem in case you haven't noticed when I'm sitting here always looking at my yearbooks and like can't sit still. But I found two special notes from Miss Erickson because I was there from kindergarten to 12th, and she was my first grade teacher. But this one was real sweet. It just says, Melissa, Missy, I love you. You are such a special person. Jesus loves you and will bless your life. Love, Mrs. Erickson. And then she wrote her, anybody that had her will recognize this famous little heart and this smiley face. But this is from 1988. It's like, but those are the blessings that were spoken over me since before I was even born, really. But I truly, truly believe that those prayers and the spiritual warriors, the ones that taught me how to pray in my life, taught me about spiritual warfare, all of it. I feel like you're the reason that I'm here. Obviously it's a divine appointment thing, but yeah. And then so I had to do my show and tell here too. So I had a little bit of what we call it talking during inappropriate times problem. But Miss Erickson loved me with her whole heart. And so we came up with some kind of incentive. And we got to go to Harbor Island. I had earned my prize with this little Friday trip or something to Harbor Island. And I picked out a couple of things, which I still have. One of them was one of those little hands, like twirly windmill things. I don't know what else. But this I found, and I've been showing this to my classes for 20 years because it's just so cool. It's little pieces of wood that like tied together with ribbons. but when you hold them a certain way, they fall back and forth, back and forth.
Okay.
But I still have it from that trip when I was 6 years old, and it's just so like the stories this little thing could tell because of my time with you, like all these classrooms and all these years, and I just think it's just amazing to be able to talk to you about your legacy while you're still building and growing the legacy and multiplying and not returning void. So thank you for investing.
Oh, well, it's our pleasure. Yeah, you're worth every minute of it.
That is so great. You use such a word there that the school is using right now. This is the 50th anniversary school year for Bayshore Christian, and they're using, and I forget the tagline they're using, it's something to do with legacy. And you just used a great word. There is so much legacy that has been created by these wonderful ladies that are with us here tonight. So many students, and the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that they have impacted their lives, and it's been through their spiritual leadership and the Holy Spirit moving through them that has impacted so many people throughout the Tampa Bay area and across the country at this point. So that's a great word that you use, legacy. I'm going to turn back to Ms. Erickson as we go back around the room, and I can't thank you ladies enough. Ms. Erickson, now I want to ask, and each of you have mentioned several people. Who are some of your favorite people from Bayshore and why? We had, I know there's so many, right? I mean, yeah, some who are no longer with us, like Mrs. Freeman. I didn't realize that till we started posting the pictures, and those were sweet people. I really loved my time that I get to speak with them and hang with them. Mrs. Brooks, who had a long-term leadership role at the school as well as a teacher. There's Coach Valdez, long-term leadership role. Each of you had long-term roles at the school. Tell us, people do you remember that you have fond memories of, and maybe what that special moment was?
Oh, golly. Well, it's impossible to tell you a favorite. It's like, who's your favorite child?
Right.
They're all my, they're all my favorites. It's, each of the people that you spoke of course, were significant in my life. And we as a faculty, we prayed together every day. We had Bible study, we worked together on our relationship with each other in the Lord, as well as teaching our children, our students, whatever the grade level was. Those early years were some of the absolute best for spiritual growth. And we got to go to Herman's house sometimes and have Bible study with Herman. That was special to him because he loved to have people in his home. The gift of hospitality was so large, is still, I'm sure, so large in him. And so we met for prayer all the time. Patty and I, we have children because of prayer. Remember the blue couch?
I do.
Okay, this is a story. This has nothing to do with the school, but it has to do with Patty and I and Martha Jones. If you remember Ed and Martha Jones. Okay, well, some of you do, some of you don't. But anyway, Martha and Patty and I were together at Martha's house, right?
I don't remember whose house it was in.
But anyway, so I was, in my 40s, and both Patty and Martha.
I thought you were in your 30s right now.
Yes, I am. I am there. Anyway, we were praying for, was it Patty? Were we praying for you, or were we praying for Martha?
I think it was Martha.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, Patty had trouble having a baby. I had 2 kids. I didn't have
all the stress from the Bayshore students and math.
Yes,
class.
it was. And so did, anyway, we prayed for Martha and Patty, and I was praying, and they were all praying for each other. Well, look at this. First, Patty gets pregnant, and then Martha gets pregnant, and then ta-da! I was nearly 45. What a blessing that was. That's Carl, my son. It was just a total blessing. And it's an answer to prayer, perhaps not a prayer for me to want another child at 45, but of our combination of praying together for, just for each other. So anyway, that's not to say you shouldn't pray for your friends and you might get pregnant.
But God spills out the blessing. Running over.
It is so. With each new year and each new group of teachers who the Lord plucked up and moved on somewhere else, and then plucked from somewhere else and brought into Bayshore, we had just wonderful relationships together, and so many of them are still friends. Oh golly, it's great. It's really wonderful. So I can't pick out one specific or even a specific group because it just wouldn't be fair. But the whole 34 years or 43 years or however long I was there, I can't remember.
It was multi-generational, that's for sure.
It was.
You mentioned a few things. We're getting some posts on Facebook, so forgive me for interrupting. One thing I wanted to ask, and forgive me because I should remember and I don't. I'm sure, Mrs. Erickson, you had a son. I want to say it was Andy Erickson, perhaps.
Yeah, Andy's my son.
And did your daughter? She was. I think I saw a picture recently. She was a manager for the basketball team, wasn't she?
Well, no, not a manager, a statistician.
Statistician, right.
Nobody managed that team except Herman. Come on.
Right. So very good. That's really awesome. Before we turn to Ms. Stevens, I want to say a few things from the Facebook post. Kyle Frisco again comments, truly amazing, godly women who changed so many young people's lives. Sean and Mike Bond.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, beautiful ladies. You guys were definitely an awesome blessing to BCS.
John was too.
And then, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. And Phil Sellers has a question. This may be for Ms. Fuller, Ms. Stevens. I don't know if he was in first grade with Ms. Erickson. Phil Sellers asked, who was your favorite student and why it wasn't Phil Sellers? So we'll turn to you, Ms. Stevens.
On any day, any given day, maybe
Right.
somebody else.
Tell us, Ms. Stevens, so we've talked about favorite moments, and as Ms. Erickson pointed out, it's impossible to name everyone that you had relationships with and friendships with that you interacted with at Bayshore. But if you can try to narrow just a few, maybe that you remember working with or students from your time at Bayshore that stand out. Surely.
Some that come to mind are no longer with us. Mary Minnick, who was a librarian for a number of years and fought cancer for many, many years.
Yes.
Just a tremendous testimony. Jerry Murray, who was our counselor, just a pleasant individual. And she also has passed away. But I think of, well, and of course, Maisie and Mrs. Carr. Mrs. Carr, when I first went to Bayshore, she told me, she said, one day you will lead a school. Now, I was young in education, and I was also young, even though I was raised in the church, I was young in understanding, I guess, really the lordship of Christ. No problem about going to heaven. I had that down pat, but the actual lordship and the fact that he does have a plan for your life. And so I was forever indebted, that came out of the blue to me. I mean, I wasn't even thinking that, but I think about many of those who were the helpers. I think of Manuel Giannis, custodian. I think of Kyle's grandfather, who did so much cooking for us.
Right.
I can't help but think of Miss Farley, who worked in the kitchen.
Farley, yes.
Judy Surrency, who was our secretary, and how she fought cancer and did leave us. But for so many, It didn't matter, Ann Caldwell, it didn't matter what your calling was, whether you were the principal of the school or the maintenance head, everybody was Bayshore,
That's right.
everybody.
That is so sweet and wonderful. You mentioned a couple of people. I remember Manny, Coach Valdez talking to him in Spanish when the seniors toilet papered on senior day, and we didn't have anything to clean it up. So he got the basketball team, Manny did, to clean it up with bamboo, to try to get the toilet paper down. And then I remember Mrs. Murray, bless her heart. I mean, that lady, she tried to get me to take calculus or geometry, maybe it was with Miss Fuller. And I said, no, if I don't get a scholarship to play sports, I'm just going to go work. So Mrs. Murray called my dad that afternoon. Things did not go well when I got home. So I ended up taking whatever that math was. Such wonderful names. Mrs. Surrency, which we had a picture on, Mrs. Erickson gave it to us and corrected me when I posted with Mrs. Way. Mrs. Surrency, I remember her as a sweet, sweet lady. So what a wonderful list of names of so many great godly people who contributed to the ministry and into people's lives. So thank you for sharing that. We're going to turn to Miss Fuller now. And Miss Fuller, same question, your thoughts on people, friends, fellow staff members, or students that stand out. We have some famous moments you've shared with us. And now if you could narrow down just a few, and I know as both ladies have said, it's hard to narrow it down, but if you could share a few.
Yeah, as they said, just amazing people that I had known over those years. Some of the teachers, Jennifer Lancaster, the art teacher,
Oh, yeah.
Kay Evenson Robinson,
Yes.
was our Spanish teacher, had not a Spanish bone in her body. I mean, she actually was home ec teacher as well and couldn't boil spaghetti. So, yeah, she told us that story. Some of students, the Valito kids, Janelle and Anthony. And Janelle actually was, I named one of my children after her, because she was just such a strong, godly child, you know, even as a kid. And her brother Anthony is now my what is it called? Arborist, for my trees.
Oh, wow.
Called him up. He came and fixed my trees. So that's really cool. That, you know, the generations and they come back and as adults. And like the school bus thing, I only drove it for a year, but that was a big impact with the other people that drove the buses and Gail Barr and just Tracy Munton, Achete, that
she should be here.
I know. Where is she? She's off in New Hampshire, probably. She needs to be here. And then, of course, there's the class of '85, which, I mean, those kids impacted me just so much. You know, John Harville and J.D. Edwards, and I mean, the list.
You bring up, forgive me for interrupting, you bring up those names. John Harville is finally with us. He's saying he thought it started at 8:30 and he's saying he's sorry. I love you. I love these ladies. Sorry for being late. And he says, these ladies influenced me to become an educator. And you mentioned the Valitos. John Edwards talks about them all the time as well. So that's really great history. I apologize for interrupting.
So I'm drawing blanks on names too much, though. I'm not good with names. But just so many of those guys. And then, you know, I sponsored the class of '88 as well and took them to New York snow skiing. And with Herman and Betty Valdez were our chaperones.
Did they?
And that one, they did. They skied. They had a blast.
Was that Lake Placid? Was
Lake
that Lake
Placid?
Placid?
Mhm.
I took some there too. I still have my ticket for the bobsled. After I saw what it was going to be like, I said, I just kiss this $8 goodbye. There ain't no
Didn't
way
do
I'll
it.
do that.
Didn't do it. Well, I skied. We did the bunny slope, right? We learned to ski a little bit. And of course, I was born and raised in Tampa, Florida, so I had not done that before. And the next slope was closed. So we did the tiny little one to learn, and then they sent us up on the big slope on the lift.
Whoa.
And that's not a good idea for a Florida kid, because I spent just way a lot of time of the ski patrol. I kept them quite busy on that one run down the mountain.
That is
Getting on
really
the airplane, I had to take 20 or 30 people on an airplane, and in Tampa, the plane's de-icers didn't work, so they split us off onto 4 planes, and I had 4 chaperones, so I put 1 chaperone on each plane, which included my principal. You know, I'm splitting him up, and prayed that when we got to Lake Placid, that the children, having been through the whole thing in North Carolina with the kids getting there without the warm clothes, I knew it would be cold in New York. So I prayed that their stuff would get there, that their luggage would get there from all over the country, wherever they sent it. And we literally prayed, God, please get the luggage there. And every piece of luggage was in a room when we got there. By the time the planes had all landed, the luggage was all there. And somehow I managed to end up on first class. I don't know how that happened on that flight.
that is really awesome.
I think whoever ended up putting us on planes felt sorry for me, because I had to coordinate all that.
So well
And,
deserved.
you know, okay, the school bus story, I was 27 years old when that happened,
Yeah.
you know, and I was in charge. It was like, who thought that was a good idea?
That school bus story is going to live in infamy. I can tell you that. And
It does live in infamy in my life, yes.
John Arvel's got another question asking if class of '88 was as challenging as 1985. '88 had my sister, Tina Rodriguez, now Tina Trussell, had Rob Faedo, Jimmy Carter. Who else is in that '88 class? But anyways, Harville wants to know which one was tougher, '85 or '88?
Ask Harville, he'll know.
That gives it away right there. That is awesome.
There's even stories I won't share from the class of '85.
Yeah, there's so many disciplinary issues that probably if the internet existed back then, none of us could be employed probably. So
Yeah, probably.
I can't thank you enough for that. That was really great, Mrs. Fuller. Ms. Erickson, we're going to turn back to you. And I have the next round of questions for you ladies. And we're already an hour in, so let me know if I'm taking too much of your time, but this is too great. I got to keep it for a little more. So I have another question, but Ms. Erickson also mentioned by either Ms. Fuller or Ms. Stevens, I forget, was Mrs. Lancaster. She's well beloved by former students also. And her husband famously came up with the logo. Can you share that story a little bit for us?
Well, I did text Jennifer and asked her. I asked her first how she was, because she had COVID, and she had a light case of COVID, but then her side effects of afterwards have been really, really bad. So you do pray for her if you will.
Absolutely.
And she might be watching. So if she is, Jennifer, we love you. But her husband, Jennifer and Jim both are artists. We're artists. And Jennifer still is, and Jim is doing art in heaven, I'm sure. But he came up, Herman wanted a logo that was manly and aggressive and assertive, and that was, you know, to show the power of the faith warriors. And Jim came up with this fantastic warrior on this war horse, and Herman liked it, and Jim painted it on the floor of the gym and then up on the wall where the Bible verse was.
It's so wonderful, and the detail, it like, if I remember the story correctly, it properly accounts for like the Jewish Israeli soldier from back in King David times, with the way that the whole uniform that the soldier wore. I mean, the detail is unbelievable. And today we live in a world in which schools simply, they go on collegiate licensing.
There it is. There it is.
There it is. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is
Rolling to me.
There's nothing.
The real kicker is it still fits.
Very good. Very good.
Well,
But
will
that
you
is so
put it
awesome.
on and model it for us?
Yeah, put it on. Put it on.
Oh, okay.
This is high level entertainment content that you're delivering. But as Ms. Stevens is getting ready to model it for us, the detail is unprecedented. And like today, they just copy digital formats from a college. They use the same logo. It is unique. And the name Faith Warriors, it's
Yes.
not just a mascot. It's a faith warrior. I think that was really amazing. There it is. Here we go.
Yes. Okay, now.
I don't know how to do this part, so anyway, but yes, I still have many relics from those days.
That is
And
awesome.
I just can't get rid of them. I just can't let them go.
That
Oh,
is so
well.
awesome. Thank you for putting that on for us. That was really great. Ladies, I want to turn to the next round of questions. I can't thank you enough, and please stay with us, but if you need to go, we understand. The next round starts with you, Miss Erickson. I got 2 or 3 more. I mean, basically it's, there's one to wrap up with, but this one is philosophy of Christian education. You spent 35 years at Bayshore. It sounded like you're in the ministry, obviously, most of your career. Why is it important that kids, and listen, my kids go to public school. If I was in Tampa, they'd go to Bayshore, but everybody has what God is leading them to do with in raising their children, train them up in the way they should go. When they're older, they shall not depart from it. But why is Christian education, why was it important to you?
Well, because the Lord called me into it. That's the first thing. Because I hadn't been a Christian teacher. I hadn't been a Christian when I was, in public school. So it didn't bother me at all. I was just a good teacher. But then when Jesus came into my life and I was born again, my goodness, I couldn't stop talking about him. And then when they started a school at Northgate Baptist and then at Bayshore, it was I don't know, it causes a child to be taught in all realms of his or her life, as Jesus grew in favor with God and man, and physically and mentally and spiritually. I mean, so we in Christian education can talk about our spirit, and we can allow the Holy Spirit who lives in us to teach through us, which is something I never knew before, but I recognized it as, when I was teaching that, I could have studied something and made a lesson plan, but the Lord had a different way to do it. And so I just learned to, you're supposed to walk in the Spirit. Well, I learned to teach in the Spirit, which is not that I didn't make my own plans beforehand, but I also heard the Lord. And so I don't know, it does, I'm babbling, I'm sorry, because
No, please, this is great.
it makes for a well-rounded student, a total whole student that we were blessed to be able to teach that child physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And when they had troubles, which so many of the kids had been, I had all sorts of little guys, little boys who were wigglers, who had ADD or ADHD or whatever the initials were, who weren't bad boys. They were just boys who needed to be taught in a different way, or girls who needed to be taught in a different way. So I had the blessing of being able to teach them in their spiritual life also, so that they could grow up as a whole person. And I think, as we, talk about these things here in this podcast, all sorts of kids are watching or typing in, or who have looked at those pictures and liked them, or put of Harry and Betty Freeman and all the different people that some of us have put pictures up of. They see, they have grown spiritually because of Bayshore Christian School, but they have also grown to be mature, wonderful adults, positive, wonderful people. So I don't, I'm not big on philosophies. I'm just big on putting my faith into action and teaching children also to put their faith into action. And if they can learn that, they've learned more than most people in a lifetime.
That is very good. And thank you for sharing that. It's very important to say it's more of calling than it
Yeah.
is a philosophy. God calls you to Christian education. That's
Yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah, there's philosophies. I mean, you can go and you can read books, and you can go to Bible college and you can learn policies and procedures and methods. Okay. And I'm sure there are schools that absolutely make you do this. And there is a curriculum that you have to be on the right page. And this is the godly thing you're supposed to do in these 30 minutes. But this is not that. This is life. This was, teaching real live people in a real live spiritual way. Even if it was algebra or trigonometry or ancient history or whatever the subject of it was, from the 2-year-olds all the way up through the high school seniors, those teachers taught in a spiritual manner. And to me, that was just the best of the best.
That's really tremendous. That's exactly right. That's really good that you share that, and thank you. I'm going to turn now for you, Ms. Stevens. This is a different question, not a philosophical question. It's more of what was the most challenging moment working with Coach Valdez?
I have to tell you this, and this is really, really honest to goodness. I don't ever remember anything that made me think I don't want to do this anymore.
Okay.
I remember we had the fundraising banquet, and we started them about that many times. He would give me the jobs like, okay, we're going to have 10 people at each table, and we're going to have 20 tables. And so I need for you to make name tags for each of the people who will sit at each individual table, and be sure that you don't miss anybody. So I would do that. And there were times when I thought, what am I doing? Why, what am I doing? But I will tell you this, everything I learned at Bayshore just helped me be prepared to not, when I came up here and I became a principal, I thought, this is not my first rodeo. I have done most of this. But no, Herman and Betty were both very, very gracious, and still now. I never forget his birthday. I always call him on February the 8th. Spent many Christmas Eves for Noche Buena with the families. And, it's, in fact, when Russell and I were getting married, we decided, I had to decide quickly because I'd been single a long time, and, I didn't want to change my mind again. And Herman told me, he said, Val, just wait a couple of weeks and the whole basketball team will be there and we can all go to your wedding. And I said, no, I can't do that, Coach. I'm sorry, I can't do that. He really, we just seemed to work well. As a matter of fact, the way that it all turned out is we both received telephone calls one afternoon from Bob Skeldon, who was the school board chairman. And he said, we're in need of a principal. And so could you two please come and meet with us with the board? Well, I had the longevity, and I had already completed my leadership degree. But as I said, I really didn't think I was 35 years old. And so I said, let me do with Herman. And I did learn an awful lot. He had a way with people, but I never came away saying, gosh, I don't want to work with this man. I never did that. So
there was never a moment.
I learned a vast amount of life just from him being in my life.
So there was never a moment when you had to say, Herman, we can't take all 5 days off for you to practice basketball. They have to go to class.
That was me saying it.
Oh,
I was going to say, yeah,
that was the math department against the sports department. They got to go to class.
I don't know, maybe we talked it over before, so he knew what I was going to say. I don't know.
Right,
I
very
don't know.
good.
But, my part really became the day-to-day operation of the school. And his part was actually, the ambassador, the fundraiser, that kind of thing. And so we really played off of each other. I don't remember a time where there was a huge conflict, or for that matter, maybe I just have selective memory. I don't know.
No, we play to the caricature of Coach because we all just remember him as this towering figure as our coach, but very godly man, and so thankful we love him to death.
Absolutely. But the point is, all man. And the point is, I know a lot about a lot of things. And, you have to respect that. And you have to say, well, Coach, that might be true, but did you ever think about this? Did you ever think about it this way? That kind of thing. So, yes, he just was and still is, even now, a very strong individual. And that's the kind of leadership, really, I think that, well, I was going to say really what Gigi was talking about, working mostly with the older kids, world view. World view. I used to tell the kids, if you don't know what you believe before you leave here and you get to college, they're going to jerk you every way but
Very
through.
good. That's right.
So world view became a real emphasis, and obviously it must not be happening now. I kind of quip when I say that, I taught American government and economics for quite a while. And of course, part of American government is the Constitution. All I can figure is for all those years, I was using the wrong Constitution because it's not like this one.
The culture is certainly changing, and the Bible, of course, describes the falling away of the church, there's going to be end times. And so we hope for a great awakening, hope for a Christian renewal in our society, and that can help things if we have that happen. Ms. Fuller, I'm going to turn to you now, a little bit different question as well. What is the difference between teaching at Bayshore in the 1980s to teaching today, teaching in college as you do? Is there a difference in the character, the personalities, the students that you interact with?
I certainly have never developed relationships with the students that I work with since I left Bayshore, because those are people that come to class, learn a thing, and leave. There are no relationships. Occasionally there's one that needs extra help or something, and you'll get into their life a little bit. But I guess the unique thing at Bayshore was just how much of life we did together in different ways. I mean, Gigi was able to teach them so many scriptural and spiritual things with chapel and those little bitty ones and such. And I always felt like I was, really more focused on curriculum, which, almost exactly the opposite, but almost exactly the same, because we're teaching people, not, the subject was obviously really important because in math, you've got to learn this before you can go learn that. So you have to do all the things. But I would say just the depth of how much of that person that you worked with. Like the senior in high school that I taught how to read, because she came in one day and said, I'm really having trouble with this because I really just can't read. And so then we spent lunch hours of learning to read. And it was like, it was really cool to me to be asked to help. It was between the student and me. It never went out to administration or anybody else to interact with it. But the fact that somebody would feel safe enough.
She trusted you.
Yeah. And that, I would say that was a really big, a big thing.
That's really interesting.
Can I just say one thing here that
Are you raising your hand,
tell
Val?
any teacher, kids do not care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's
When
really
we
good.
came up here, we're in a very small, rural farming community, very poor. Demographics 50-50, wealthy and not so wealthy. People ask, what is the big difference between here and Tampa, Bayshore, or Seminole Presbyterian, or wherever? 300 miles. The human heart does not change.
Yeah.
Very good. That's very good. And that's a very good saying. I mean, it's so true. I mean, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. That's really so awesome to hear. We're going to
And
go
I
with
think that's what everybody said so far that we had at Bayshore. Not only just for the kids, but for each other.
That's right.
Gigi and I would like consider her as one of my dearest friends.
That's right.
Kathy Jordan, she started off in Genesis and gone all the way through Revelation more times than I can tell you. Telling me, those kind of things. Gail Barr,
Amen.
elementary school teacher at the time, Miss Hines. But and of course with Maisie, there's so many people. I still communicate with Fran Wynant.
Yeah.
It's just there. Tom Dibble. Tom Dibble's mother came when I took a group of kids up to Scroon Lake and brought me homemade cookies.
Oh,
I mean,
that's sweet.
it's just a whole different environment. Everybody, for the most part, is like-minded.
that is so awesome. And thank you for sharing that. And it's a recurring theme in every podcast. I mean, Bayshore mattered. It is uniquely blessed. It is a uniquely blessed ministry to have the teachers that we had, the staff we had, such as the ladies here tonight, and the impact that they've had on so many students. It's remarkable, really. I grew up in a Baptist church and a Baptist school throughout elementary school. And my parents know a lot of people from those churches. We remember them, they stay in touch, but there's really nothing that has been remarkably impacted or mattered like Bayshore has. It is truly a God thing for all the people that came through the ministry. I have one more round of questions. We're almost done. I can't thank you enough for staying. One more round of questions. Before I do, we got Missy back. She had to step away for, what was it, parenting? What was happening there, Missy?
Well, I was supposed to leave at 8:15 to pick up my daughter from
Oh,
church, which I love that she wants to go and I get to have her every other week. So, yeah, but then I was just enthralled with the stories and the nostalgia, and it was like 8:20 something, so I just had to.
Every time you go, we pull you back in, as
Yeah,
Godfather 3 says.
get back.
So do you have any my last question is going to be like a wrap up, your fond, what do you want to say about Bayshore in your last comments? That's going to be my wrap up. Did you have a final question or thought you wanted to share with each of these ladies?
Only that this has been the highest honor and privilege so far. I've only done a few of these, but yeah, you are all important in one of us becoming who we are today. I would speak for Matthew when I just thank you for your commitment to Christ and his calling on your life, and showing us what that looks like and how it can look. And that's all for now.
That's really sweet and nice. Thank you for doing that. I am very thankful that you ladies joined us. Last round of questions. Start with you, Mrs. Erickson. Your final parting thought about Bayshore Christian Ministry, church, school, whatever that is for you. If you could give some final thoughts for this evening. This is to remind people the 50th anniversary school year. When we started doing these podcasts, it was basically, talk about basketball, but in keeping with the theme of how Bayshore has really impacted so many people, there was more that people wanted to talk about related to the ministry. So we had to expand the discussion, and we're so thankful that you guys are here. Ms. Erickson, your final thoughts about Bayshore Christian and its impact on the community and you yourself.
whew, well, let's see. I can talk about the elementary school a little bit. because elementary, what we did in kindergarten, 2-year-olds through 5th grade, which is my little corner of the world. What we did there was build foundations. And, when you're older, you might not remember all of the things that were there, but you've got a solid foundation. And you might go away for a while, but then you come back because you have a foundation built under you. And like here in Texas, the ground sometimes settles. And unless you have a good foundation under your house will fall down.
Mm.
And that's the same thing with the people that the Lord put in our lives as our students and our fellow teachers and our administrators and our parents and our grandparents, all the people that we touched. We're foundation builders, all of us, elementary especially, because, foundations sometimes aren't seen. They're just there. And they're not real obvious and shiny and, like winning state or something like that would be woohoo. But that's who we are. And I guess that would be a parting word, that a thank you to the Lord for each of you. A thank you to the Lord for each of perhaps whoever is out there watching or listening, or who might watch and listen later. Because I watch these podcasts not while they're live, but later on, and I love them. But a thank you to the Lord for each of us, and then that He funneled through us His love and His knowledge and His understanding and His way. And that was the most important thing, because if you do it His way, then the knowledge comes and you can accept it and you can learn it and you can go out and be a grown-up and do something with that knowledge. So that's a ramble. But it was, I'm just so thankful for the Lord for allowing me to be a part of that ministry. And here I am in Texas. I'm surrounded with people who don't know me and don't know my history, and don't know anything about those many, many years at Bayshore. They don't know, but it's just so cool to be able to sit and talk to you guys that I love and have loved all my life nearly, and see the fruit that is growing in all of our lives. And I appreciate it so much. So there you
That
go.
is so wonderful. And thank you for sharing that. And you were planting seeds in dozens, if not hundreds of kids over decades.
Yeah.
It wasn't just young elementary kids. You had a commanding presence on that campus. When you walked on the red top, everyone could see
Stop.
your presence, and it was a godly presence.
Yeah.
It was one of leadership and a godly spiritual leadership. And I can't thank you for enough for all those years of contributing to those kids.
I know when I whistled, just about everybody stopped.
Right.
I remember new pastors coming in, until they were whistle trained, they were just no good at all.
Kyle Frisco says we always remember the famous whistle. So that is so
I
good.
bet he would still stop if he heard it.
That is really good. I'm going to turn now to Ms. Stevens. I'm surprised that I've not heard the number of referrals that I had when I was serving as office assistant. I'm so thankful we've not covered that ground. Ms. Stevens, your final thoughts and memories of your time, and you ladies have shared so much already. If you can just put a final thought on our time together tonight and your time at Bayshore.
Well, it was a gift for me to be able to sit under the teaching of Bob Shelley.
Yes.
If I had never been to another church, and I mean, I grew up in the Baptist church and I was saved, but there were so many dimensions that I did not know. And I'll be forever indebted. In fact, when Russell and I decided to marry, we went up to Tallahassee and he married us. So first of all, the spiritual part, people like Jim Limley, music ministry with Bev Shiro, people that were, just, it was just such a happy and uplifting place to be. Now the word was preached, so you got your toes stepped on, you needed to. But I think my best days, memories are through 18 years of me growing up. I mean, I was what, 24 years old, just me growing up and going through boot camp, so to speak. Because it all came to fruition. And that's where I learned the majority of what I learned to do and not to do. And it was a wonderful environment. I still have very many good friends. Things that you just don't get anywhere. My 70th birthday was celebrated at
Mary Brown.
those bakery.
That's not possible because I know you're not a day over 21.
Well, you know what? There's not gonna be no liars in heaven now.
No, that's true. That's true.
No, I'm pleased to be 73 years old, and I thank God for all the blessings. But I really do believe that Bayshore was the beginning for me, and I was at the bottom part of the mountain, and the Lord He just lifted me up, and it was a wonderful experience. Wonderful kids that I still hear from today, kids that we're praying for. Now, when Mike Blocker passed away, I stood in the kitchen and sobbed. And my husband said, "What is this? Who is this?" I said, "It's a student of mine." A student? I said, "Yes, you don't understand. You don't understand." Meet and pray with some kids and for others these young people who are going through some pretty bad trials. But they trust me enough to know that I trust the Lord enough that I'm going to pray for them and be there for them. And for those things, I'm grateful. I don't think you can ever put a price on anything like that. People said forever, "Oh, you should have been in public schools. You'd have been rich." Let me tell you, God has an umbrella of protection, and you get under it and you're fine. You step out from under it, please don't tell me you got wet, because that's not how it works. When he calls you. And actually 3 times in my life, I know salvation. When I got married and when I went to Bayshore. I mean, it was almost as though there was just a still small voice. And for those things, I'm grateful. It was a wonderful experience. Perfect? Absolutely not. But wonderful. And it's been a pleasure to be able to share tonight. I was glad to hear from Phil Sellers. We communicate on Facebook and David as well. And oh my goodness, so many. Tom Chastain, kids that you don't even think about. Russell Stice, you don't remember these are long ago kids. But sorry, Philip. But anyway, it's wonderful. And you as well. You might remember when I got in touch with you about some information from one of my kids here who wanted to go to law school. And, that wouldn't happen if we had not had some common bond. So I thank you for all that you've done. And it's been a joy. I've watched every one of them. And it took a long time to explain it to my husband, but it's been great.
Well, that is, I mean, each Mrs. Erickson and Ms. Stevens, when you share these things, they're so meaningful that they're it's hard to, how do you talk about it? It's just so wonderful to hear the words you guys are sharing tonight, and and I agree with all of them and share them with you. And it turned out, Ms. Fuller, your last thoughts on Bayshore. And if you remember, Ms. Fuller, you never had to throw me out of class like you did Chris Patterson. Not sure if you had to throw John Harville out of class, but your last thoughts about your time at Bayshore.
Bayshore is just such a community and such a unique place of people all essentially with a common bond, that even though, Chris Patterson, I taught junior high Sunday school when I first met Chris Patterson, and he walked in with 2 lizards clipped to his ears like earrings. I learned a lot that day, and then I worked with and loved Chris for many years after that, and he didn't do that anymore. No, that was great, but. But just the interaction between church and school and everything, but just the community and the fact that everybody cared about each other and the foundation that we were all laying together for those kids and for each other, that just a really unique time in life. And just like Val said, I grew up there, like 21 when I started teaching at Bayshore, and until I was 30, and grew up a lot emotionally, spiritually, mathematically, teaching, all those things. It was really just a great experience. And it's nice to know they didn't hate me,
Oh.
Beloved, you're all beloved. Before I let you go, Missy, your final thoughts. Thank you for rejoining us. I'm sure you got to go back to parenting here when we're done, but if you got any final thoughts for these ladies as well.
No, because we would just keep us here a lot longer, but I'm hugging you, and yeah, I don't know. I think I already
Yeah.
tried to wrap it up as best I could, but again, my pleasure, and I'll see you at least on Facebook, if not sooner.
Amen.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to give you one last word, and you did. You wrapped it up really well before. And ladies, I can't thank you enough. This has been awesome. You've given us an hour and a half of your time, but so many decades of memories that you have impacted so many people in the community, and it's been through God's calling on your life, and that He has filled you with the Holy Spirit, which you've been in turn able to fill so many people up with, and planting those seeds, staying in connection with them all these years. It's just amazing. And we can't thank you enough for all of that, and for all the time that you've given us here this evening, and for your time at Bayshore. What a great ministry, and what great people we had that were teaching all of us. So thank you, ladies, for tonight. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you.
God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.